This is the introduction to applied chords, spelling and hearing applied chords. What is an applied chord? An applied chord is a dominant chord borrowed from a key other than the tonic, but we just hint at that new key briefly. An applied chord intensifies the motion to its tonicized chord. I usually demonstrate this with the national anthem. Usually this first phrase ends with a 5/7 of 5, but imagine what happened if we got rid of the chromatic note. Now we have a 2/7 chord going to 5, and we have no sense of going briefly into the key of 5 like happens here. Let's do a brief review of applied chord types. We can have non-major triads that are altered to become major. So for instance, a 2 chord could then become 5 of 5, go 5 and then 1. A second kind is non-dominant 7th chords, which are altered to become dominant. So for instance, 2/7 can become 5/7 of 5, 5 and then 1. A third type is a diminished triad substituting for 5/7 of something. So now in this case, if I have my 5/7 of 5 in C major will be D, F sharp, A, C. We get rid of the root and all we have is F sharp, A, and C. That would be this kind of applied chord. And lastly, we can have diminished 7th chords substituting for 5/7 of something. So an example here, 5 of C major, for instance, is G major. Okay, instead of having D, F sharp, A, and C, which is what would take place with 5/7 of 5, we can get rid of the root D and instead have F sharp, A, C, E flat. So we call it a substitution because there's greater dissonance now in the chord going to 5. Let's next talk about applied chord chromatic patterns. Okay, so the first pattern is that most applied chords are sharp side. You'll see a raised note, which is typically the leading tone of the new key. That raised note is generally going to be the 3rd of the 5 chord or the root of the 7. So an example would be in, let's see, C major, 5/7 of 5 is a sharp side because G has more sharps than C does. And so the applied chord, the 3rd of the D, F sharp, A, C is F sharp. But then if that were a 7 chord, F sharp, A, C, E flat, that raised note would then be the root. We can also have flat side applied chords. So now typically the chordal 7th is lowered. So the 7th of the chord, not of the scale, is lowered. So a common example is 5/7 of 4. Let's take C major. 4 chord will be F, A, C. The 5/7 of 4 will be C, E, G, B flat. Notice how the chordal 7th is lowered. Occasionally, applied chords can be diatonic, and so that means that they are unaltered. So an example here is 5/7 of 3 in the minor mode. So if we're in C minor, 3 would be E flat. 5/7 of E flat would be B flat, D, F, A flat. The B flat and A flat don't need chromatic adjustment in the key of C minor. Now let's work on spelling some applied chords in C major. Okay, here's our first one, 5/7 of 5. Okay, so what you're going to do is unpack the label 5/7 of 5 backwards. So you first get the of 5 at the end, so that's G major. And then you work backwards. So count up 5 from G, G, A, B, C, D, Okay, and then in the key signature of G major, which is 1 sharp, you then skip E, which gives you F sharp. You then skip G, which gives you A. You skip B, which gives you C. Let's try another one. 565 of 5. This is not a big deal. All you have to do is simply invert the applied chord. 5-7 of 6. Now let's think of the parallel major of 6. Notice that when we have 5-7 of a major key and then 5-7 of the parallel minor, they're the exact same notes. So this allows us to substitute the parallel major for a parallel minor, and then we don't have to do the step of raising the leading tone in minor. So let's unpack the 5-7 of 6. What is 6 of C major? So C, B, A, so A minor, okay. And then A major has how many sharps? 3. So let's count up 5 from A, B, C sharp, D, E. Skip F sharp, G sharp, skip A, B, skip C sharp, D. So E, G sharp, B, and D. Okay? In the case of 7 half diminished 7 of 5, this is going to be borrowed from G major. Note that the raised note is the root of the chord, F sharp. Let's take a quick look at 7 fully diminished 7 of 5. Again, this is borrowed from G major, but 7 diminished 7 is what's called a mixture chord. The chordal 7th is derived from the parallel minor, or G minor. Okay? So instead of F sharp, A, C, E natural, we now have F sharp, A, C, E flat, sounding like this, moving to G, then back to C. Okay, how do we identify an applied chord? Well, we're going to listen for a chromatic note. Raised notes usually go up, so the leading tone of something. Lower notes go down. They're going to be Fa or scale degree 4 of something. A 5 of something should have root motion down by fifth. So when we talked about 5-7 of 5 going to 5, the roots were D going down to G, so D, C, B, A, G. A 7 diminished, or 7 diminished 7 of something, should have root motion up by half step. So for instance, if we do 7 diminished 7 of 5, going to 5 in C major, the roots went from F sharp to G. And there is no overall modulation to the new key since we don't cadence in it. Going back to the national anthem one. Are we in G major? No, we are not, because then we go back to C major. Here are some skills to review. You want to try, as a basic warm-up, singing different alterations of a major pentachord. Major pentachord is the major scale from notes 1 up to 5. And then you're going to work up to singing a chromatic scale. I'll only demonstrate the first 2 of these. Okay. Letter A, do, re, mi, fa, so. That's just a standard major pentachord. Do, re, mi, fa, so. Letter B involves the leading tone of so, fi. Okay, so here's B. Do, re, mi, fi, so. Letters C and D have other chromatic alterations. Okay, E and F present the chromatic scale, and you really should work on being able to sing this. Letter E sounds like this. Most of the chromatically altered solfèges are simply raised, with the exception of te, which is usually included as te because that's part of 5-7 of 4. In letter F, we then have a falling chromatic scale. Most of the chromatic notes are lowered in terms of their solfège, but Fi is raised to reflect 5 of 5. What are some different common applied chords, and what do we listen for? Well, I'll give you a sample of this by going over the 5-7 of 5 in the very first column. So to listen for 5-7 of 5, your ear has to be attuned to Fi going to so. So if we're in this key, you'd be listening for the fi to so motion, kind of like listening to Maria or The Simpsons, okay? And then you'd be listening as well for some dominant functioning chord, either a major chord, a major minor seventh, a diminished triad, or a fully diminished seventh, or a half diminished seventh, going to G major, okay? Going on, here's a method of listening to applied chords. We're going to listen for altered notes in the overall scale. Fi in place of fa, for instance. Then what you're going to do is match it with the expected applied chord, which is 5 of 5. Let's next sing applied chords in tonal patterns. I will demonstrate the first pattern. Your teacher can accompany you with block chords, or you can do it yourself. And then as you get stronger and better, you can then simply sustain the bass note. Okay. So what we do is we sing each applied chord in solfege up and down. We then take a breath and we move on to the next chord. So number 1 would be this. Do, mi, so, mi, do. Re, fi, la, do, la, fi, re. So, do, mi, do, so. So, ti, re, fa, re, ti, so. Do, mi, so, mi, do. And then the other ones get more complex. Let's talk about applied chords in dictation. Here is a process for you to think about. You start off by writing out the bass line. Are there any notes that are chromatically altered? Then you write out the soprano. Again, are any notes chromatically altered? The altered note can occur in an outer voice or in an inner voice. So if it's in an outer voice, you're going to notate it. If it's in an inner voice, you need to make a note about it, but you will not notate it. Analyze Roman numerals, including all applied chords. Do the applied chords make sense in solfege and in the chord types? If not, then you're going to need to revise your outer voices. And if you can, get your teacher to play through the dictation very, very slowly. This tends to be the most helpful thing to help you spot check chromatic chords. Here is an applied chord dictation. So we're going to assume 3 applied chords of 5, of 4, and of 2 in some order. So here is our first hearing. We're in the key of B flat. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. So start to work on that. Now let's work on the bass line. So the bass line sounds like this. Okay, so let's figure out what some of these different notes are. Measure 1. Okay, that's a chromatic note. Let's see what direction it resolves. So it goes up. So measure 1 must be do, di, re, ti, do. Now listen to measure 2. Okay, so we have a leap there. So let's spot check the leap. Do, 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 and then work down the scale. So that was do, do, fa. Okay. Here measures 2 to 3 again. Ooh, there's a chromatic note and it's going up. Okay. So then measures 2 to 3 must be do, do, fa, fi, so, so, do. Let's see what the results are. Okay, so here's our finished bass line. Notice that D in measure 1 in the bass, solfege syllable D, is B natural. Notice in measure 2, E natural is our fi. Okay, so now let's start working on the soprano. There's a chromatic note. Next, let's see what was the direction resolving of our chromatic note in the soprano. It went down, and then this note got repeated. Okay, so then that must be starting in measure 2 in the soprano. Do, te, la, la, so, fa, mi. Okay, so now we see the bass soprano in likely chords. So take a look in measure 1. We have 3 chord choices for beat 2. Okay, so let's just talk about measure 1 and what its possibilities are. So we have a 1 chord. Okay, this can't be 5, 6 of 2 because we have a major second in the chord, the chopstick sound, and it also cannot be 7 diminished 7 of 2. There is a missing of 2 on beat 2. Okay, and then that went to, then of 2. Okay, instead of it cannot be a passing 5, 6, 4. Okay, and then on beat 4, we also hear a major second, so that can't be 5, 6. It has to be 5, 6, 5. It cannot be 7 diminished 7. And so similar decisions underlie our selection of all the different chords where we're not absolutely certain what they are at the very beginning. Okay, now notice that I have made chord choices, okay, for every single decision point in the harmonic analysis, and then I've indicated my choice by crossing out impossible choices, and then putting a check mark by what actually happened. So give it a listen. 2, ready, go. So 1, 5, 6, 5 of 2, 2, 5, 6, 5, 1, 5, 7 of 4, okay, and then 7 diminished 7 of 5, CAD 6, 4, 5, 7, 1. Let's finally go to ideas for further improvement. Listen to the diatonic unaltered harmonic progression and compare it with the chromatic one. Do a sung warm-up of each applied chord before doing a dictation using them. And lastly, double-check your spellings of applied chords once you are done with your harmonic analysis. I hope this video has been helpful.